Good evening. Good evening. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Stephanie Chang, and I'm the State Senator for Senate District 3. I'm one of the hosts of today's event, and the other host is at the hospital eagerly awaiting a new baby. Yay! So send all of the healthy birth vibes to which hospital? I don't know. Well, the one, wherever they are, to make sure that there's a safe and healthy delivery. Thanks everyone so much for being here. This is our water affordability town hall. We are excited to engage in a conversation with some very exciting speakers today. Before we get started, want to give a couple shout outs. Commissioner Zong is here. Thank you for being here. City Council Member Watts is here. Thank you. And anyone else? Oh, and then of course our teams are here for both Team Chang and Team McKinney. And I think we're going to go ahead and get started. So, as many of you know, we've been working on water affordability for a very long time. And so today we really wanted to delve into this issue, talk about the history of it. Hopefully you picked up a handout on the way in with some information about the bills, which we developed as a product of many months of conversation, bringing together water providers, water advocates, environmental advocates, the Department of Health and Human Services, United Way's, community action agencies, literally 8 months of work. And literally we continue to make updates to the bills every week as we continue to hear from people about their concerns and their suggestions. And so we are continuing to make the best product possible when it comes to state policy. So as we all know, rising water rates is an issue that affects a great deal of Michiganders across the state. It is not just an urban issue, it is a suburban issue, it is a rural issue, it affects folks really across this whole country. And so we are going to delve into that issue, talk about the solutions, and really also want to hear from all of you and your questions and ideas. So first, I'm going to actually invite up Elin Betanzo. She is from Safe Water Engineering, and she and also Noah from the University of Michigan are here, and they authored a report back in 2022 all about water affordability across the state of Michigan. You can look it up online. If you signed in, we'll make sure to send you a link to it. And Elin, we'll hand it over to you to talk about the report. Hello, is that working?
I think so.
Okay.
Can you hear me? Okay, so I'm Elin Betanzo, and so my colleague Noah and I worked on this report on statewide drinking water affordability with the University of Michigan Water Center. And so the purpose of the study was to illustrate the challenges faced by residents, water utilities, and state government in confronting water affordability and access to safe water in their communities. So we are quantifying how many people across the state struggle to afford their water services. So our scope covered drinking water, sewer services, and stormwater. And so when we looked at the data, we found that this is an issue at individual households, urban, suburban, and rural. It's also an issue at the community level, and so there are specific communities that with many individual households that are having challenges where the entire community is having struggles. Then we have a community-wide struggle to afford adequate water infrastructure. So then it's really a problem at the utility level, not just at the individual household. And we also found that there's households in every community that struggle to afford their water bills. When we looked at the average cost of water across the city, we found average statewide, did I just say city? I meant statewide. Average inflation-adjusted water costs roughly doubled between 1980 and 2018. So So they increased by about 188%. While small cities, suburbs and rural communities, they're mostly following that trend. But then our larger urban areas have a sharper rise in cost, and some of them have up to 320% water rate increases. So a huge increase over that time period from 1980 to 2018. Water bills are the smallest of all essential services for vulnerable households, but the percent increase in water rates over that time period was the greatest. So between 1986 and 2018, a 443% increase in water costs. And so that was a greater increase than any other essential household service. And for water services, there are no comprehensive federal or state programs supporting residents to pay their water bills. So that huge increase in our water bills is creating a large scale problem since we've got no program to address it. The rising water rates and stagnant incomes mean that Michigan residents spend a greater percentage of their income on water in 2018 compared to 1980. So a lot of times we talk about the percentage of household income we're spending on water. So sometimes we talk about 5% as a threshold. In 1980, about 2% of Michigan households were spending more than 5% of their income on water services, and that increased to 7% in 2018. So about 4 times as many households were spending more than 5% of their income on their water bills in 2018. So the scope of this problem is large. It covers the entire state, and it's urban and rural areas. And then I'm going to hand it over to Noah to give some additional data.
Thanks, Elin. So as Elin mentioned, we did a lot of that analysis in 2021 and in 2020. So we were using 2018 as kind of our benchmark. I was able to update some of those numbers for this meeting, just to kind of conceptualize where we are in this moment before we consider this legislation. So currently across Michigan, on average, people are paying around $700 annually towards water and sewer. That comes out to be about $58 a month. And 6.1% of households statewide have those really high unaffordable bills, those bills that are more than 5% of their income. That's roughly 1 in 20 households who are really struggling to afford their water services. Represents around 145,000 households statewide. I'm going to do a little bit of a zoom in now because we're in Warren, so I'll talk a little bit about Macomb and kind of what the numbers look like in Macomb and then also Warren. So in Macomb, the cost of water is a little bit more than it is statewide. It's around 714. And unaffordability, around 3.7% of households have those really unaffordable bills. That's around 10,000 households across the county. And in Warren, the cost of water is lower than the state. On average, it's around $580 annually, but the unaffordability is roughly on par with the state average, around 5.6%. So again, 1 in 20 households in the city of Warren they have those high bills, they're struggling to pay their water services, and that's around 2,727 households in the city. Yeah, that's just to conceptualize where we are and where the city is specifically, and to kind of give some numbers so as we move forward we have an idea of who's impacted.
Thank you both so much. One of the things that I vividly remember from 2020 was getting a spreadsheet from the Department of Health and Human Services that showed how many households across the state of Michigan had past due water bills, and it was astounding. It was over 317,000 households. Granted, this was in the first year of the pandemic. Folks were adjusting. There was a greater financial crisis during that time than compared to now. But it was indicative of the fact that this is really a statewide problem, as the report showed, and that was from 2018, right? So, the data is there to be able to demonstrate that this is very much an everywhere issue. And I remember as we were pushing in the legislature that year for a water shutoff moratorium in December 2020, working with my colleagues across the aisle and saying, look at these hundreds of people in your own tiny villages in the Upper Peninsula or your cities on the west side of the state. And I think that they were just really surprised, because sometimes I think that we all know that poverty and struggling families is something that many of us are aware of, but it's something that you may not be aware of if you're not paying very, very close attention, right? And so it was, I think, shocking for a lot of folks to recognize that this is something that was affecting a lot of people literally right around them. I want to just lift up, before handing things over to Sylvia, lift up that this is an issue affecting folks in terms of financial stability, but it's also very much an issue when it comes to thinking about public health. So we definitely learned that in 2020, right, in the pandemic, when we were still learning about what was this virus. The first thing that we were told was wash your hands with soap and water. Well, if you didn't have access to water, how was that going to happen? So we quickly saw action to ensure that we were addressing access to water. But the lessons that we learned during COVID still exist now, and we know that when you don't have access to water, the spread of this disease, the spread of certain illnesses is more likely. And so we've got to make sure that regardless of who you are, where you live, how much money you have, that everyone has that access to water, because it is not just an issue for financial stability, but also a huge public health issue. So our next panelist is Sylvia Orjuño from the People's Water Board Coalition, who has been a water warrior for a really long time, and it's been an amazing honor to work with her. So Sylvia, can you share about just some background of the People's Water Board, the issue of water affordability, and then our work on the legislation?
Sure, thank you, Senator. Hi, everyone. It's really a pleasure to be here in Warren. Senator saying here, I am with the People's Water Board Coalition. I'm a new director to it. The coalition is a group of social justice, faith-based organizations, environmental groups, grassroots groups that are working on water affordability, water quality issues, and really trying to represent the interests of people like in the community. And so we were formed back in 2008, and this work that we got involved with was really going back to when I started doing a lot of community organizing with residents in Highland Park, and I'm so glad that there's a couple of members here too, because they really taught us about water affordability in the context of emergency management. And I think you all remember how hard it was in so many cities across the state, where the state had declared, look, we're taking back any democratic control you have, and we're going to actually have to focus on paying the bills. But at the same time, residents are saying, well, what about us? We're not able to pay these bills that you keep sending us. They're too big. And yes, we understand you got other bills to pay, but we can't take it out on the residents by making us pay bills we can't afford, not fixing our pipes, or then moving those bills onto property taxes, which makes it all the worse, right? Because now your house is at risk. And so many residents in many places started having conversations about these, and a lot of them happened, again, starting in Highland Park into Detroit, but a lot of those emergency manager cities like Flint and Pontiac and Benton Harbor, Melvinville, Hamtramck, where people were trying to figure out what is going on and how can we do something about this. We need our elected officials to listen to us, but we also need a way to get control of the water bills and whatever has to happen with infrastructure so that people aren't being denied water service at their homes. And so all of that sort of tied into what ended up happening with the pandemic, where a lot of things started coming to a head, and communities were saying, look, we can't take care of ourselves if you don't let us get the water turned back on, if you don't make the water affordable, and now we've got this public health crisis that's just making it worse. So we were really lucky in the state of Michigan that back in March of 2020, when this was happening, there have been so many conversations already happening around water shutoffs and water affordability that the governor responded first in the nation to actually say, look, we're going to restore water service where it's been disconnected in homes that had their water shut off, and we're going to put a moratorium on any more shutoffs while we deal with this public health crisis. And those were really important because they allowed more conversations to happen across the state, where other city governments, other state representatives, water departments were saying, all right, maybe we need to look at this. So at the same time, a lot of people were losing their jobs. We all know this, right? A lot of folks were getting laid off, or people were having to figure out what to do because you have to homeschool your kids. And it was just getting too hard because the water bills are going up even more now, right? So people who were working from home, if you were able to, saw bills going up. I want to share a couple of numbers with you here too before we get into like the specifics of the bills, because I think it matters, especially for Warren. With Warren being the third largest city in the state, we've been saying for many years, look, we've got to talk to more people in Warren because they're experiencing a lot of things that are happening south of 8 Mile, similar to things that are happening in other parts of the state. And we recently just got some numbers. We've been working with another team over at the University of Michigan called Poverty Solutions. And so People's Water Board had done some FOIAs to some select cities to see if we could get the data to see what was going on. And this actually is just, it's new information. So in Warren, for instance, regarding the number of shutoffs, in 2019, there were 2,874 shutoffs in Warren. In 2020, again, when the pandemic hit and the governor said, look, we've got to stop the shutoffs, there were only 509. In 2021, 474. But then back in 2022, when things started getting a little bit better by way of the pandemic, and utilities were saying, look, we can't afford to not have people pay their full bills because people could pay partial bills and not get shut off. They were saying, look, we've got to have full revenue. We're in trouble. People were saying we got to get money from the state, from the federal government. They started shutting off again. So in 2022, the numbers that we got so far are 2,263. So over those 3 years, there were at least 6,120 shutoffs. And this is just the city of Warren. Over in Hazel Park, for instance, just right next door, the numbers we were able to get for 2021 were 597 shutoffs, and in 2022, 733. So this is a lot of households, right? And then you figure an average maybe 4 people per household. That's a lot of people impacted. But then the other problem that we talked about is liens. So when people couldn't afford their bills, some communities say, well, we don't even shut off, we just roll the bill over to the taxes. In Warren, in 2019, there were 1,321 houses that had their water bills rolled over to taxes. In 2020, 1,914. In 2021, 2,278. And then we weren't able to get data for 2022. But those 3 years, there are 5,513 homes that had their water bills transferred to the property taxes. And I think as anyone can imagine, especially if you were one of these families, if you're already having trouble paying the water bill, you're definitely going to be having trouble paying those taxes too. And now it just got worse, right? That's the scary part, because now you're thinking, what am I going to do when that tax bill comes? Because now we're in trouble about losing this house, right? So these are serious numbers, and a lot of people who are impacted. And so one of the things that we've said is, look, we've really got to be talking to more folks here in Macomb, Warren especially, because there's a lot of need for water affordability, but not a lot of conversation. And we've done like some door knocking, and one of the things that we find though, and maybe this has been your experience too, is a lot of people don't want to talk about it. And it's not always something that people are willing to be open about. Some people find it embarrassing. But I can tell you in like the experience we've had when we were going door to door in Highland Park and Detroit and Hamtramck and other cities, people will willing to let you in the house and talk a little bit more about it, but they don't want their neighbors to know, right? If you're having trouble paying your bills, or if you're in a family that's had the water shut off. And you know, for us in Detroit, it became a very public issue because they would spray paint that little curb box where the water department comes and takes off the cap to turn it off. They would spray that blue, right? They said that was misdid. They had to do it. Misdid made them spray paint it. But then everybody on the block knew your water was off, right? And so it led to a lot of problems in getting people to be open and transparent about it. But one of the things that has been good over the years is a lot of people said, look, this has to stop. If our local governments can't solve it through policies or ordinances, then we need to start figuring out what we can do at the state level. And that started happening because many communities were saying, look, this problem's too big for any one of us to take on. We fought for many years in Detroit to get the rules changed, to get the policies. made different so that it was fair, so that people can pay based on what they can afford. But every city has its own ways of operating. They have different budgets, they have different responsibilities. And in the end, what we saw is there's so many places across the state having this trouble. We really need to address this as a state solution. And so what we have in the back there, if you can get a chance to get a copy, is a summary of the different bills. And so you'll see that there are 7 different bills that are part of this, 6 different bills that are part of this, and they all form what people have been saying get at the heart of the problem. For one, we need to start a water affordability program at the state level. In the state of Michigan, there's no protection or any kind of program to help you if you have a water bill problem. In fact, DHHS didn't help anyone with their water bill until around 2013 or so. There was just no help for water. You could get help with your energy bill, you could get help with getting a water heater, you could get help with a funeral, you could get help with food, lots of things like that, but not water. It wasn't something that we recognized in Michigan because people just assume you don't have to worry about water in Michigan, right? We're surrounded by it. You can get water anyhow, anywhere, and it's cheap. And it was cheap for a long time. But a lot of people said that it was sort of like falsely cheap because we weren't paying for the infrastructure to keep it working well and keep it so that what came out of the tap was safe. And so now, that's one of the bills, is to create the program. Another one is to create a new fund. So rather than every city having to figure out, well, if my customers can't pay the bill, how do they get help with the bill? We create a brand new state fund that everyone who has a water meter in the state pays into, including companies. And so it's a $2 fee per month that everybody pays into, and now we have a state fund so that no matter where you live, you can get into a program now. You don't have to wait and hope that your city comes up with something. There's another thing in here that is really, I think, important. It's about shut-off protections in 2 ways. One of them is that some cities barely notify you that your water is overdue, or if they do, it's not always obvious. It just looks like another bill, right? This now has that water utilities have to contact you in multiple ways. They can't just say, oh, well, we mailed something, right? They have to try to call you. They have to knock on your door, they have to leave something at your door. They have to make multiple efforts before they shut you off. So that's another area of protection. The other one is for tenants. So if you happen to live in a house where your landlord is responsible for the water bill but hasn't been paying it or pays it late, and then somebody shows up to your house and they're going to turn you off, tenants now have protections. If you're not responsible for that water bill, your landlord is, you're not going to have your water shut off. The water department has to go to that landlord and sue the landlord, but you're protected as a tenant. So that's another important piece there. Another area is that, at least for those of us in Detroit, it doesn't seem to be too much of a problem in other places, but Detroit was so serious on cracking down on people, for people that were desperate. So I knew some families in the middle of the night because their water was shut off and they could not come up with that $1,000, $1,100 the water department had required of them. In the middle of the night, people snuck outside to turn that water on just so they could give the kids a bath, or they could wash some laundry, or do the dishes. And then before the light came on, they went and turned it back off again, right? Because they didn't want to get in trouble, but they were desperate. And so what happened, though, is when the city found out, people got charged with felonies, 5-year felonies, for desperate acts. So we want to get rid of that. Make it a civil infraction, right? Get people into a program so they have affordable water, but don't make them felons because they were desperate to take care of their kids. And then the last one is, let's make water a human right in the state of Michigan. Let's make the state start looking at what are the things that all the different departments in the state can do to ensure that people will always have a way to afford their water, and that water will not be something that is limited to certain people, or some people can have safe, clean water, but others can't. So it makes the whole state start looking at this human right to water, and it makes sense, right, in the Great Lakes state. So thank you, Senator.
Thank you so much. Just wanted to add a couple of quick points before we go to Christy McGillivray. So I know that some people are thinking, like, how does this work? How's it going to impact me? What's this thing about the $2? What about RAP? Just a lot of questions because there's some misinformation out there. So the way it will work, if you are under of the federal poverty level, which for a family of 4 is $60,000. So if you qualify, you're under 200% of the federal poverty level, you would be eligible for the water affordability program. You would apply either to your local provider if they've got a water affordability program, or to the state if you live somewhere that doesn't have one, but you're in the state program, and you would end up with a lower water bill. So instead of, so far in the past, a lot of the efforts have been around, okay, you get behind on your water bill, and then you try to get assistance to help pay for that bill. But then it never actually solves the problem, because then the next year you just still have an unaffordable bill. So the whole point of these bills is to make sure that you actually get a bill that's lower, and that is actually 3% of your household income, meaning it's something that you could actually afford to pay. So if you're between 0 and 135% of the federal poverty level, your bill wouldn't exceed 2% of the household income. Or if you're between 136 and 200% of federal poverty level, then the bill wouldn't be more than 3%. Also really important is that we would also help paying down $1,500 of arrearages, so past due bills, $1,500 in year one. And then if there is even more than that, the second year you could also get additional money forgiven. And then plumbing repairs. In our work with various water providers across the state, we've worked with a number of water providers in this region, but also the statewide water provider organization. They said we really need to take care of plumbing repairs, because we've got too many cases of people who are just have these high bills because the water's not actually even getting to their tap. We've got some older homes, some leaky pipes, so taking care of those plumbing repairs is really, really important. And I want to point out, sometimes people say, okay, what about this $2? How's this going to work for me? Well, if you are low income, if you're below 200% of the federal poverty level, that $2 will basically be in the total of what is considered as your total bill, so that way all of that ends up getting reduced. So don't let folks fool you. If you're lower income, you will get a lower water bill. And then the other thing that I really wanted to point out is that, if you live here in Warren or in Macomb County, if you are in the Great Lakes Water Authority service region, then you are eligible to apply for the Water Residential Assistance Program, the WRAP program, which is a great program, and we encourage folks to apply for it. And we know that, for example, in Warren, there have been over 600 families that have participated in WRAP over the past year, which is great, but we also know there's even more need that isn't yet being met by this program. And we also know that the WRAP program does not have enough money to go beyond another couple of years, which is why we need to pass this legislation to ensure that there is long-term sustainable funding to help ensure that programs like WRAP can be successful by raising those funds and reducing water bills for low-income residents. So now I want to bring in Christy McGillivray, who is with the Michigan Sierra Club, and she has been another key partner on our water affordability work group over the past year. And Christy, I'm hoping you could talk a little bit about water infrastructure, how these bills also help water providers themselves, and sort of the financial stability aspect of things, and anything else you want to add.
Awesome. Hello? It might be awesome. Hello? Okay, awesome. Great. Hi, everyone. So thrilled to be here. Love to see everyone. Really quickly, I want to start off by pointing out the consensus that has gone into this package of bills. It is no small feat what the real inside negotiators have accomplished here. I actually do not count myself in that group. I relied on Senator Chang and Sylvia Orduño to tell me when things were good, and I believed them. But I've gone back and read the fine print, and it's definitely good. What we have here is a package of legislation that addresses an immediate need. It takes into account the service providers and the needs they have. It takes into account the water utilities. It takes into account the advocates. It takes into account public health officials. It takes into account every single person on the step of the process of supporting other folks who are struggling with this, which means that when we pass this, this bill will be implemented well. And that sounds like a small thing, but it is no small thing. So I really commend everyone that was in the weeds hammering out the details on this, because it is an absolutely fantastic package of legislation. It is really also groundbreaking. Nothing like this really exists in the rest of the country. So we should be really proud of how far we've come. We went from having the United Nations visit Detroit in 2014 to declare a human rights emergency, to now where we have water utilities joining with advocates to say, we have to get this under control. We can't shut off people's water anymore. So this is huge progress. We just have to get it across the finish line, and we're going to need everyone's help to do that. But really quickly, I want to go back to why we have an affordability crisis. One of our favorite things to do culturally is blame the people suffering from a problem that is systemic instead of the causes of the problem. And that's what we've done with water affordability. We hyperfixate on people who are struggling to afford their bills, when what we should be doing is asking why the bills are so expensive in the first place, right? What's up with that? So, I'm just gonna throw it out there. Does anyone want to hazard a guess? Why are water bills so expensive and restaurant is not allowed to answer?
Probably because it rained from the sky.
Any guesses?
They charge us for it,
They charge us for
for
it.
the rainwater.
Okay, well, spoiler, we funded building our infrastructure, and then we switched to financing it. So let me ask you this. If you pay for a house up front and you don't have a mortgage, will you pay less or more?
Less.
Less! Why?
Because it's paid off.
What?
Why?
Stronger offer. If you don't have to finance, you have to pay interest.
You don't have to pay interest. We're all laughing. This seems so obvious. This is the core of the problem. We funded our infrastructure up front, and then we financed the maintenance of it, and we removed functionally, almost all of that federal support, and we're relying on ratepayers only. Our system was never designed to be sustained with ratepayers only. And so what we've wound up doing is paying a lot more for less, because we are paying off debt. That's what's happening. Our only way out of this is collectively pooling resources again, so that we are actually paying for the infrastructure and not just paying bad interest. So this is one step towards that. We have a lot of work to do. It's going to cost, according to a report put out during the Snyder administration, it is going to cost $1 billion a year going forward in perpetuity to actually keep pace with the cost of maintaining our drinking and wastewater infrastructure. $1 billion a year, all right? That's what it's going to cost. So we have more to do than just this affordability program. But what this affordability program is going to do is it's going to help fund things at economies of scale. So is it easier to pay something with 20 people paying for it, or 200? 200! So it will be significantly more expensive for any singular city to try and do this on their own. It will be so much easier for us to do this if we all pool together our resources. And that's what this package accomplishes. It'll also help with those plumbing repairs, and those are important for the whole system. If you're not taking care of plumbing repairs across the entire system, the damage is going to get worse and worse and worse. It's like if you have a leak in your roof. If you have a leak in your roof and you don't fix it for 20 years, it only gets worse. So that's going to wind up helping everyone. And furthermore, I did mention debt. So the debt doesn't go away just because we don't pay it. So there's no world here where we don't act on this legislation and everyone's bills stay the same and the problem goes away. That's not what's going to happen. If we don't act on this legislation, then instead of everyone paying a little bit right now to be humane and make everyone's lives easier, everything will be more expensive and more people will be hurt down the road, because there is no ignoring this problem. It is going to be with us either way. And either we are spreading the cost of that bad debt over everyone, or we are pooling all of our resources together to pay that bad debt to make sure that our utilities actually have what they need in order to prioritize service, instead of wasting precious time and resources criminalizing and punishing low-income folks whose lives are just hard enough already. They don't need that. So I hope that helps put some things in perspective, and thanks for paying attention.
Thank you so much, Christy. I know we sort of made a couple of comments about this already, but, it was really incredible to have folks participate in this work group process that, you know, a half a dozen years ago, we're not necessarily working together in a cohesive, collaborative way. When you have water providers and water advocates actually working together, that is a good thing. That means we came up with legislation that can get implemented, will work, and will help a lot of people. So at this point, really would love to open it up to questions and comments, and we'll also track if there's anything that comes in. Oh, no, I forgot, we're shutting off the Facebook Live because it's hard for them to hear the questions. Okay, so if you have a question, raise your hand, or maybe, okay, Jackie's saying.
Because we have a corded mic, so
Oh, okay.
folks could line up.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Hi. Before I ask, I did just want to clarify, the percentages that you mentioned for like who qualifies under like the federal poverty limit. What were they again?
Oh, yeah. Okay, so if you're between 0 and 135% of the federal poverty level, then your bill would be 2% of household income. And if you're between 136% and 200% of federal poverty level, then your bill wouldn't be more than 3% of
So
your household
that would
income.
include like everybody in the state.
What?
So everybody in the state would be included.
Across the state, if you're at 200% of the federal poverty level or below.
Okay, so what if you're nowhere near the federal poverty limit? Because my concern is that the federal poverty limit really doesn't mean anything. You know, I like for context, my household has been on like SNAP and Medicaid our whole lives, right? And the federal poverty limit is kind of a joke. If you make $1 over it, you get cut off from everything. That's one reason why I never bothered applying for RAP, because you have to go through, just the way, I don't know, maybe I could be wrong, but just the way you did it, you had to go through like DHSS and like get your caseworker, and it's like, I don't want to deal with those people more than I have to.
Okay, so just to clarify, so if you're, so this is not saying at the federal poverty limit.
No, I know,
It's at 200% of the federal poverty, and so the reason we came up with it that way is because we know that certain programs have been at basically like lower thresholds, which have meant that less people have been eligible. So we intentionally chose 200%, although we are talking about, you know, whether or not, where we should go with that. But right now, as is in the bill, we're at 200% because we believe it'll capture more people to be able to help more Michiganders.
Okay,
So,
I
yeah.
just want like to clarify, because
Yeah.
that was something I was concerned over.
Okay.
You know, like I have no doubt it'll help a lot of people, but I just wanted to know, like, you know, in case we could do like our own federal poverty level in Michigan and base it off of that instead.
I don't think so.
Okay.
Just because we're working with a number of different agencies where everything is sort of based on a percentage of federal poverty, because just that's like a standard. But then, like, the higher we go, obviously, if we go 200%. I mean, at one point, I think, I don't know, we had so many discussions about this, but, you know, some programs you have to be at 150%, some you have to be at 200. We want to be as generous as possible, and so that's why we went the more generous route. But we can also talk to offline, and maybe if, but again, it's dependent on how many people are in your household to determine, you know, what we're looking at in terms of those numbers. So, but we're trying to err on the side of actually being more generous to help more people.
Okay, thank you.
It's a good question.
Since the senator said, ask a question, or I didn't know a lady was in waiting.
Go ahead, Russ.
Okay, I have to see. Senator Chang made a very important point in her comments about the public health dimension of this. And I'd like to elaborate on it. I'm sorry, my name is Russ from Detroit, and I'm a former water plant operator in the Detroit system. And in my neighborhood got hit hard in 2014 when they blitzkrieg without notice or advance warning and hit 20,000 people, 20,000 households, no notice. And people had been paying part of their water bills but couldn't pay the whole thing. This was done by Rick Snyder's emergency manager. And so the courts told Mike Duggan to take it over. But the disconnections continued at a rate of 20 to 30,000 a year in Detroit. And in 2016, Henry Ford Hospital and many in the health arena were concerned about this. When you say public health, this isn't personal health. This is you and your household. This is about your neighborhood. Henry Ford Hospital did a study of 33,000 Detroit patients. And they found that on every block where one shut-off occurred, the risk of communicable disease went up by 150%. And I can elaborate on that, but I don't think I need to. But if somebody wants to talk about it, I'll explain how that works. But the city threatened the hospital with cutting business deals if they publicized the report, and it got taken off the Henry Ford Health website. And the city continued until Governor Whitmer told the mayor that they have to stop. And the mayor publicly criticized her. But by that time, they had done 170,000 shut-offs. We need people who have serious public health dimension of this, knowing that it was risking public health. The public health is, my answer to the people who say, why should I help somebody who is not able to pay their bill? Because you are helping yourself. You are helping your neighborhood, and you're helping the children who are going to school where the children are going healthy. And that's why we all need to support this.
How you doing? My name is Ruby Riley. I'm a Detroit resident. Been in Detroit 73 years, soon to be 74, but I've been in my house since 1977. The water rate, you know how many cc's of water I use by me being by myself for a while? 0. But they want to charge me all this extra stuff, and I don't drink the water because I had a flood in my basement in 2016, and they replaced the pipes in my house, say about a couple of years ago. Before that was replaced, my toilet never had rust in the bottom of it. So Wayne Metro had put a new toilet and everything in, but that's when it rusted. Before the new toilet was put in, my toilet was not rust, and when I take a bath or when I run water in a tub, rust is out of my tub. So I do not drink the water in my house. I do not cook with the water. I have to buy my water, and I don't think that's fair. And like I said, I hardly use water because it's just me. So if I'm at 0 cc's, why am I paying all this money? You know, so
Yeah, so, thank you. Yeah, so, you know, on both water bills, we're talking about water, sewer, stormwater, combined bill. And so we would be happy to take a look at your bill with you and help try to walk through what's on there. But again, because it's a combined service, it's billing for not just drinking water, not just the water coming out of your tap, but also, again, that sewer and also the stormwater. So, and I know it's something that I think a lot of folks have, it's a very common question. So, Elin?
and let me tell you, you know what else I do? See, I'm an engineer without a degree. Because it's just me here, like if I take a bath, I give me some buckets and fill up full of water and flush my toilet with that when I use it.
Yeah.
Just the toilet now. Now I don't drink it. But yes, I you know, recycle it down the toilet.
Yeah, so a lot of the water bills in communities, and Detroit included, have increased the portion of the bill that goes to a fixed infrastructure fee, and they've reduced the portion of the bill that's based on water usage. And that's because everybody needs water infrastructure. We need the water treatment plant, we need the pipes in the ground, we need the fire hydrants, we need valves. We need all of that to work to get the first gallon of water to your house. And so that costs the same if you're using 1 or 100 gallons. So we're used to billing based on usage, and so kind of incrementally when you're talking about the incremental costs of delivering water, you have to use more electricity to pump, more electricity at the treatment plant, but that's kind of tiny on top of the fixed infrastructure costs. So that's why water bills can be very high when your usage is very low, because getting that first gallon of water to your house is really expensive. But that's a really regressive fee structure, and that is extremely burdensome on low-income people. So that's why the water affordability bills are so important, because water utilities need that money to be able to maintain the infrastructure, like Christy was saying. And so it's...
And it was built with the progressive structure.
Right, it was built with a progressive structure. So,
And that means that at one point, we had a much higher tax rate on both wealthy individuals and corporations that helped build out this entire infrastructure. That's what I mean by progressive. And we've shifted, and instead, we are paying for the basic functioning of our infrastructure with individuals across the board. And so that's a fundamental unfairness, and so that's what Elon was getting at.
right, so I'm not saying it's awesome, but that's why it is the way it is right now.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Dr. Robert McTire, Senior. I'm president of the Cary Rogie Hilldale Block Club in Detroit. So glad to see this being done. I personally am a strong advocate of improving our environment and so forth, and so I'm going to be singing your praises. 2 quick questions. First, what's the realistic political support that this is going to get? I mean, and I heard that working across the aisle, wording Senator, and she mentioned that, and it's wonderful to hear that. But you know, I mean, in the political climate we're in, is this going to be a challenge getting to the governor's desk and becoming law? Second, Christy, if I could get your card, I would love to hear you recap how that began. You said it so eloquently, but I know it's much more complex than that. I need to hear it again. Well, but I need to hear it again. So I don't want to take up time, for you to explain it again. Thank you.
And thank you for the question. Oh, yes. We did live stream the panel on Facebook, so you can always go back and watch. We'll definitely get cards from folks who are here. We're working really hard. We are having conversations with colleagues in the Senate all the time, but we definitely need all of you. In terms of sort of like where things are, we are building up a lot of support actually, and I've talked to a number of Republican colleagues in both the House and the Senate, and there are a number of folks who recognize that we need to do something. And so there are, I think, part of, being a lawmaker is figuring out, well, what is the thing, what are the changes that someone might need to see in order to get their vote to commit to voting yes. So we're actively working on those conversations. But I have colleagues in northern Michigan, in the Upper Peninsula, on the west side, and just really all over who, both Republican and Democrat, who recognize that this is a problem and it would greatly benefit their residents. But I think, of course, the details matter, and so that's why we're actively trying to figure out those details. But as far as how all of you can be involved, we'd love for Sylvia and Christy to talk about how people can get engaged.
The question is really important, and I think that that's also why it was important to have this town hall here tonight. As I mentioned, with Warren being the 3rd largest city in the state, what you all think matters. And so I know we've got several folks here from Detroit because we're just north here of 8 Mile. But what's happened is there are a lot of people weighing in that are not impacted people. people who say, I can afford my bills, why can't other people just pay their bills? I don't know why I should have to pay into a fund. Other people just need to take care of their own business, right? But again, it's not, those aren't perspectives that really, I think, understand what our other folks here have been saying, is that we're really one water system underground, right? Sort of like we kind of understand that our road system is one system above ground. And so wherever you decide to go after this, you can get on any road, and it's not as if you have to worry about who paid for that part of the road, right? Because we all need it, we all share it. But having all of our pipes underground makes it complicated, right? Because we don't see exactly like where the wastewater goes, right? And it goes south of 8 Mile, right, to clean up all of the stuff that comes out of people's toilets and out of the drains and whatnot. But it doesn't matter, because we know that we're all connected, and we know that we're proud to live in the Great Lakes State. We got more water than anyone else in the nation, but we got a lot of problems here. But what we're saying is that, look, too many people that are having problems aren't saying what they need to have happen. Sometimes people don't even talk to their water departments because they feel like they're going to just say, well, this is what you got to pay, just pay it, right? Or you might call your local city council member and they'll say, well, you know what, I'm sorry that's happening, but the policy is, this is what the policy is, right? What we're saying is that, look, water is so essential to everyone's household. The first thing we probably all do in the morning is turn on the water somewhere, right? It's not the bathroom sink, it's the kitchen faucet to make the coffee or take your medicines. We can't do without water, and so we've got to have this conversation in a way that really appreciates how central it is, right, to our lives as individual households, but also to the state, for business, for recreation, for school, for everything we do, work. But it's been politicized, unfortunately. And so there are right now, unfortunately, especially in Macomb County, a lot of people who don't have water problems who are saying, no, we do not support this legislation. We don't need this legislation. People who want the legislation are probably just people who don't want to pay their bills. And so it's sort of stifling, I think, a really important conversation that we need to have about our water infrastructure, about what we need for public health. But it's gotten kind of complicated. What we're hoping is that more people who are impacted by the issue, who struggle with being able to pay their bills, who have experienced having their water put on their property taxes, will speak up and say, you know what, I believe this legislation will help my family. This will help my neighborhood. It will help my city. And I think that many of you that live in Warren too, and again, I say this as someone who's a community organizer, it's probably fair to say that there are differences in even the city of Warren for people that live south of 696 than live north of it. And the opinions are going to be different, and I'm seeing that as we're going to different meetings and talking to people. I can tell you, for instance, I've been to Sterling Heights now 4 times to the city council, asking them to support the legislation, talking about water affordability. And people are like, we don't know, it doesn't seem to be a problem here. But people that have problems don't want to go to those meetings, right? You don't want to go and give your opinion and then hear people say, that's your problem, right? And so, but if you go over here to Hazel Park, there are a lot of people, right, that have problems with their water bills. And so we just need more folks to step up and say, look, city council member, mayor, state representative, state senator, I support this legislation. I think we just need more of people who are impacted to speak up and be willing to say that this is something they support. Because right now, people who are not affected are having the loudest voice.
Did everyone see these back there?
I got that.
Yeah, okay. So if you don't have one of these, grab it on your way out. This is the Citizens Guide to State Government. It is the most helpful publication that the state of Michigan puts out. I'm just going to say that. Sylvia hit the nail on the head. We need people to call state legislators. This will happen if we have 100 voicemails in every single state senator's voicemail box. We have to show that there's overwhelming public support. So I've seen this kind of grassroots effort move mountains. Truly, when a elected official has a voicemail box that is full of constituents asking for something, they pay attention. It's true. Senator Chang can tell you that better than I can. When you have a ton of voicemails in your inbox, are you like, there's a problem, I should do something, right? Okay, so just to demonstrate how not a big deal this is, I'm going to call my state senator right now and put it on speaker. I'll just leave a voicemail. So my state senator is Kevin Hertel. He has heard from me on this, but he hasn't heard recently. So he needs to hear again. So you can look, they're alphabetical in here. You can find it by district, super easy to use. So it's always 517-373, and then he is 7315.
You should have your daughter leave it.
Oh yeah, do you want to leave? Are you stressed? Is this putting you on the spot? You want to do it?
Practicing civic duty.
We'll do it together. Okay? How about you just say, I'll say something and you can say something. Okay, everyone's going to do this, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Hello, you have reached the office of State Senator Kevin Hertel. We're sorry to have missed you. To ensure we can help you as quickly as possible, we ask that you please leave your name, phone number, and a detailed message. You can also reach us at senkertel@senate.michigan.gov.
He's great. Can't wait to talk
Thank
to
you
him.
and have a great day.
Record your message after the tone. When you've finished, you can hang up or press 1 for more options.
Hi, Senator Hertel. This is Christine Gillibrand, your constituent. I'm over at 2727 Lockmore Boulevard in Grosse Pointe Woods, 48236. I'm actually calling you on speaker right now from a packed town hall in Warren, where we are all so excited about the water affordability legislation. So I am. We're really looking forward to making sure we get all your questions answered and securing your strong support for this. And Edith would like to say something too.
Support water affordability.
Thank you so much. Okay, that was like less than 2 minutes, right? So we need hundreds of people to do this. You can grab one of these and you can just like once a day make a phone call with people. Seriously, I'm going to be pretty systematic about it and pull up a list. It takes me, I can make about 25 calls an hour. So I'll be making 25 calls an hour and asking those people to make calls. I like being systematic about it because, like Sylvia, I'm a community organizer. But that's what needs to happen. So it is not complicated. It takes time and energy and effort, but it will literally move mountains. So please do that kind of thing with me. Promise? Okay.
Other questions? We'll definitely hear from you. I also know that we've heard a lot from some Detroit folks. I know there's Warren folks here, so want to hear from you as well. All right, go ahead.
It's sad. This is a sad situation. We've been doing this mess for so many years until you think that water is, you just want to give up, but we have not given up. We've been doing this for years, but I wanted the thing that she just did, that was great. A new kind of way to do things. But on the other side, I think we need to have some more of these meetings throughout all the areas we need to go to. And they'll get tired of us and they'll do something in order to stop us, and that is try to stop us from doing the work that we're doing. But we, we're gonna have to go hit some doors now.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Because when you got, I cannot take it too much longer. And that is with these folks out here stealing our water. Water should not be, people shouldn't have to go through this type of stuff. And they sit back at their houses and play and have a joyful activities there. I mean, the United States, it makes you want to just stomp on everybody in Lansing, everybody in D.C., and
Not everybody.
We can't stop with Stephanie. Stephanie ain't said nothing like that I would be against. But no, this is not no play game. And I'm not saying that you said it was. But this, to me, when I started out on this, and other folks who work their rights. To me, it represented war. And this war is still going on and it's still there. It's a sword that you can't get away from, but you can get away from. So I think that we need to do, I appreciate what you have said and what have you. We got to some kind of way call on more meetings throughout the state, you know, and say, no, we tired of this mess. We don't need no Brown or whatever that nuts name is. None of them around here to try to represent our interests and tell us what to give us and everything like that. So, you know, Stephanie, I know you've been working a long time on it. And I know we've been pushing. But at the same time, sometimes we have to stop some things that we're doing and begin to kick some ass.
All right.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you. We'll keep working really hard. All right. I'll also shout out to Councilmember McGee. Thank you so much for being here.
So, I want to correct one thing for sure. Senator Chang introduced me as councilman. I'm former councilman. So I'm not speaking for my colleagues, but I will speak from experience. So I want to correct one thing that Christy said about paying for all the maintenance and everything. Yeah, we're paying for the maintenance. As a Warren resident, I've been paying for all the blunders from the Detroit Water Department for years and years. Millions and millions and millions of dollars of mismanagement. And I'll give you one good example where it's in the hundreds of millions. Giant sinkhole on 15 Mile. We're sick of paying for what Detroit did with the corruption and everything. That's not the residents' fault. That's the politicians' fault. There should be held to accountability for that stuff, and we shouldn't have to pay for it. Now, you've heard the thing, we're here, I'm the government, I'm here to help. No, you're not here to help. I've lived long enough on this earth. Raise your gas tax, we're gonna fix the roads, still waiting. Raise your license plate fees, fix the roads, I'm still waiting. Everything gets raised and nothing ever gets finished, but we got all this money for all these pork barrel special interest projects. That needs to stop and we can take care of everything. Now, water bills. Here in Warren, for the last 4 years, I harped on water bills. When I got on council, we were $12 million in the arrears. It's down to about between $4.5 and $5 million in the arrears. Now, in knocking doors, talking to residents, here's what I found. People think water should be free, so I'm not paying the water bill. And number two, I'm a renter, let the landlord pay for it. Now, doing my research on rental homes, we have about 12,000 rental homes that we know of. We're not even sure how many we have. The water bills go to the tax bills to the landlord. The landlords own 300-400 homes in some cases. They foreclose, they buy the homes back on another name, and do the same thing over and over again. So we're continuing to get stuck. So if you want to fix a problem, you might want to start with rental homes and the landlords, because it's disgusting what these people are doing to all of us, So let's make sure we have, some of the facts you had were good. Some of your numbers are skewed because you make them all compound and all that kind of stuff. And you want to talk about maintenance. Let's find out where the maintenance went wrong.
Sure, and just to be clear, I'm talking about statewide.
I understand.
So I think that it'd be really interesting to dive into the specifics of Warren.
You know,
but I think, Sylvia's point to the fact that the whole regional system has to function, I think is a really salient one.
So, I talked to a resident today. Mm-hmm. She uses 1 unit of water. So she's minimum billed at $20.31, I believe it is, okay? That's a 10% increase with that $2 to her.
You know what I hear over and over again? I hear everyone saying that they want the whole system to work. They want it to be managed well. They want rates to be fair. They want transparency. And they want to make sure that we are providing the best public service. And I think we can get there.
I'm good with all of that, but what I'm not good with is when you look at all the things whether it be state, whether it be local, state, or federal. They're always here to help us, but nothing ever changes. Nothing ever gets any better. And you know what? People deserve better than that.
So I hear the frustration.
Hearing what this
one
young
of
lady
them,
went through, that's unacceptable.
yeah, so I would like to respond. We developed these bills in coordination with the folks who literally will be implementing it. The Department of Health and Human Services, Wayne Metro, community action agencies, United Ways. Those are the folks who literally will be doing the work. And so we built these policies based on their recommendations so that they can best be able to do it. And so I'm a big believer in these have to be implemented well, right? And so absolutely we try to design them as best we can so that they can be implemented well. In terms, so I don't know, the person that you talk to or what their household income level will be or anything like that. But again, if that person is low income, let's talk, we have to sort of take a look and do the calculations, but really the idea is for low-income folks that we wouldn't be raising their water rate, they would get lower rate. There was another point that you mentioned that I wanted to address, and I can't remember what it was.
Renters.
Oh, renters, thank you. Yes, you knew what was in my brain. Okay, so absolutely. We've actually heard from a number of folks. I had a colleague in Genesee County who has folks who have been renting, they've been paying their rent, mobile home residents, and their landlords literally just have not been paying their water bill. And I know that that's not the only place that's happening, because we've heard of that happening in other places as well. And so that's really alarming, right? Like, these folks are trying to do the best they can, they're staying current on their rent, but because we've got a whole other set of legislation dealing with mobile homes. That's a topic for another day. But the point is, that there are folks who are literally doing everything they're supposed to, but because we have so many problems when it comes to landlords, we've got all of these problems. So we are actually working on building in language in the shut-off bill to protect tenants from shut-off if they have paid the rent and they can show that in the lease it's actually the landlord that is responsible for the water bill. That's not to say, of course, there are lots of responsible landlords, and so we thank them for being responsible landlords. But it's got to be a situation where everyone is doing their part and everyone's acting responsibly. But in order to get to that point, we have to build in the policies to get us there. Want to hear from others? Feel free to raise your hand, and let me go to Michael first, and then we'll come back up here.
Hey, how are you guys? I actually live right on the other side of Mound, so side note, if you can fix Mound Road, that'd be great. But we're here to talk about water. So I know one of the questions is we want to hear from people that would actually use this program. I'm not one of those people currently. I'm a father of 4. Actually, I think I technically wouldn't qualify because I make like 60 grand. But we can afford a water bill. I have no issue with that. That wasn't always the case. I'm father of, or 3 rather. And we're fine where we are now. We make enough income. But that wasn't always the case. I remember growing up where my water did get shut off. I was getting ready to go to school, getting ready trying to take a shower, and my mom just worked a lot and we couldn't afford our water. She had to choose between sometimes lights this month or water this month or rent this month. And so I don't know if this is the best answer to the solution. I'm not a legislator. I try not to pretend to be. But what I do appreciate is we do have legislators like Stephanie Chang, Donovan, even one of my favorite legislators back there, Gary Watts, who do listen to our concerns, and we can have a dialogue. And so I just appreciate everyone that's coming and continue to have that dialogue. But I know people that are currently in my family that do live in Warren and do live in Detroit that would benefit from this program. And so for me, if I could spend $2 a month to make sure little Michaels or little Izzy's or little Emmas can take a shower in the morning before they go to school, our kids have to worry about so much. We don't complain about our prison tax. We don't complain about all these other taxes that we pay for that we don't benefit from. And this legislation is doing exactly what previous administrations did for the lights, for electricity. So all those, like, this is, if we can save one little kid's life by paying $2, like, I'll pay my $2 or $24 a year. So that's all.
Sandra, and I'm from Detroit. I'm very angry. Had a little plumbing problem last week. Looked like a little pinhole down there where you read your meter at. I called the water department. They told me, you don't come in your homes anymore to check it out. Get a plumber. So I did get a plumber. So the plumber has completed one part of the meter, not the meter, but up under the meter. And the rest, I need for them to cut it off at the street. So they told me it would be $45 to cut it off and $45 to turn it back on. That's $90 that's going on my bill. As of now, when they did come out, they made a boo-boo. They supposed to have went on and gave me another lock box because my lock box was messed up. They put the lock box in wrong. I'm still waiting on them to turn my water off. It takes 24 to 48 hours for them to turn the water off. I'm very angry because I'm a senior. They're not giving me any kind of break. I got to pay $90. It's going to be on my bill. But right now, my water's still on. They haven't came out. I don't know when they're going to come out. So I can call my city council. Some I can get, some I can't. I was waiting on little Mr. Gary Brown, okay, that makes over close to $300,000 a year. And get a pension. And this is what I can't understand. How can you sue the city of Detroit years ago and then get a job with the city? I'm just confused. So that's why I'm angry, okay? I'm also angry because I'm like my friend here. I'm home alone, okay? And I don't drink the water. I buy my own water, okay? So I'm like her. Why am I getting the big bills for the drainage, for the sewage, all of that? Then when I ask for y'all to cut my water off, you're going to charge me $90? And everyone I talked to in Detroit, they didn't know anything about it. So right now I'm telling everyone and anyone that can hear me, and I'm getting ready to call to talk to Metro Times. I'm putting them on blast because that's what they need. They need to be put on blast. Thanks a lot. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you so much. We'll follow up with you and get your contact information, and then we can check in with CWSD to find out what's going on and advocate on your behalf.
And I appreciate you guys sending me on Flashpoint yesterday. They're very nice.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Any other questions or comments? Come on up.
Hi everyone, my name is George. I'm originally from Warren. I now live in Fraser, which has much higher water bills. I did a lot of work in Warren. I had Gary's face in my hand for 12 hours on election day this November at my local precinct at Warwood's Tower. And during the local elections, I heard a lot of politicians talk about, especially here in Warren, about promoting and protecting homeownership. There's been a lot of concern that home ownership is being eroded here in the city of Warren, and we're seeing more and more landlords, especially negligent landlords here in the city of Warren. I think that really is a concern, and these bills, I think, can be seen as a way to protect and preserve homeownership, because when you don't pay your water bill, it goes on the property taxes, and then it becomes a lien on the house, and then you can lose your home. As we see the cost of water to continue to rise, and it is going to continue to rise, and who knows what the economic situation here in the city of Warren is going to be going forward. I was just listening to something the other day and said, back in 1990, out of all the states, Michigan was 16th in terms of overall economic well-being. We're now number 30th, right? So things could, not necessarily improve, right? Things can be tougher, and more people might need this. And without these bills, a lot of people are going to be at risk of losing their homes. I think we want to continue to be, protect our way of life as a city of homeowners. This legislation is very much needed. Some other people, Sylvia made a great point the other day at the Board of Commissioners meeting. I'm seeing her every week, it seems like now, talking about the existing RAP program and how it doesn't have enough money to continue the way it is. to increase that, right now we pay 0.5 of CLEWA's budget goes to RAP. It can't be anything more than that. And in this area, that's $4 million, $4.2 million for 4 million people. What you're proposing, Senator Chang, is like $70 million for 10 people, so much better dollar per person ratio. So that the RAP funds aren't enough, and they can't be any more than 0.5% of CLEWA's budget. To make them, to put more money into RAP, you'd have to renegotiate, you'd have to open up the lease. When, Macomb County and Oakland County had a lease to use the Detroit, water and sewer department, their assets. We got a 40-year lease on them. And I was reading an article from back in 2014, 2015 time. We got a pretty good deal on that lease from what it sounds like. We were, the Macomb County and Oakland County negotiators were very aggressive. We struck a very good deal. It's not something that, we here in Warren would want to see renegotiated. So I think just another reason to pass this legislation, because we do want to provide affordable, clean, safe drinking water to everybody here in Warren, here in Macomb County, and I think here in the state of Michigan. And that's it. So.
I wish Mr. Brown was here too, and I'm glad that we have some folks here from Detroit that came to talk to him directly. So we'll have to make sure we get him at another town hall. So we can hear him directly. Yeah, so we're going to give him the benefit of the doubt, right? Something came up that he had to attend to. Okay. But I think what you just were describing is really important. I think it'd be really helpful, especially for the senator and for other elected representatives who are here, to hear more stories, especially from those of you that live in Warren or Macomb County. If you can tell us a little bit more about your water bills, or even if it's not yours, that you know about your mamas or your cousins or somebody's bills, and how you're worried about the bills. If you have an opinion about the legislation, I know we'd love to learn that, but if you can tell us more about what are the water problems that folks here are experiencing, we'd love to hear more of those stories.
Other questions?
And I'll just add on RAP, which is one of the biggest issues with RAP is it has a fade out. You can only be on it for a year or two, and we don't see a lot of people on Macomb on RAP until very recently, the last couple years. So another story that I think is an important story is people phasing out of RAP and phasing out of that assistance that they needed. And we don't quite have examples of it because RAP has just been recently, like in the last couple of years, RAP has picked up in Macomb, and I think Warren especially.
I just had a quick question. So let's say this legislation is passed and everything. How would you access the help you need? Like, it's a more technical question. How would you, like, let's say you need help on like a bill, how would you access that? Do you go through like a certain department? Is it a new department? Did you apply through the state? Did you apply through DHS?
Yep.
What is that?
So it would depend on where you live, but if you're here in Warren, and assuming everything goes the way that it's currently set up, you would apply to through Macomb Community Action for water affordability, for the water affordability program, which would basically be like a new and improved, bigger, better version of RAP in this area. And then they would take your information, they would take the application, get your household income information, and then basically ensure that you get actually a water bill that is no more than the 3% or 2%, depending on where your household income is at, that you would start to see new water bills with a reduced amount. And then they would also check with you to see, okay, if you do have any arrearages, and how much that is, and then help with taking care of that forgiveness. And then on the provider's end, so this is an important message to help remind municipal leaders. So that's how it would work for the customer, the resident. For the provider, they would be tracking all this information about, who are all the people on the affordability program. They would get the information about who's on the affordability program, and then eventually they would actually get money from the state to backfill, basically the difference between what you would be paying and what the actual cost is. So that way they're not losing money. In fact, they actually might be getting more money in than they would otherwise, and they would also be getting that arrears forgiveness. So So that's how we work on both the residents end as well as the municipal end. Any other questions?
Yes. So as a senior citizen, shouldn't we get a discount on that bill?
Right, so if you're,
And then when we, the ones at 70 and up, shouldn't we be able to get a deal on
so
that?
this is based on household income, but we also know that obviously if you're a senior and you're on a fixed income and you're low income, then yes, absolutely you would qualify, but it's got to be based on your income.
But you know what's definitely, there are mandatory bills we have to pay out our money that we get once a month. Like if you drive a car, I drive, you gotta pay insurance. You know, you gotta get your driver's license renewed, you know, and all that stuff. So anything that's mandatory that we have to pay, it should be deducted from our gross. Because like with the insurance, they'll say like, Medicare, I pay $100-something out of my check that they give us, you know, that I work for. So they don't even count that. They go by your gross. It should be your net.
I hear what you're
It should
saying.
be your take home.
I hear what you're saying. I think we hear you. Again, we need to sort of like work with what is doable on the community action agency end, but we can bring that back and see if there's any other tweaks that we can make. Okay. I don't think I see any other. Okay, we've got one more comment.
Thank you. Hello, how are you? I know you guys in the corner over there. My name is Victor. I'm with the Michigan League of Conservation Voters. The Michigan League of Conservation Voters is a statewide nonprofit environmental organization, also nonpartisan, dedicated toward keeping folks like Stephanie Chang, environmental champions, in office, getting folks who don't care about our environment out, and continuing that accountability cycle. We also work to hold utility companies accountable. And this is one of those many opportunities, right? So the last few weeks we've been heavily investing our time in Macomb County and towards these water affordability bills. A few weeks ago we actually held an impromptu phone bank to call folks in Macomb, to get them to call the Macomb County Commission and withhold on voting on a resolution that would go against these affordability bills. We were able that day to get 24 voicemails into that office. An office that's not used to getting those type of voicemails and that type of community outreach. And they were able to push back that legislation as a result. So I'm really, really proud of that work. But we haven't stopped there. And we're going to continue doing this every week until the vote officially happens. Starting, well not starting, but probably concluding with this Wednesday the 14th at 10 a.m., we will have an affordability water phone bank that will be virtual. I'm going to pass this around now before we all get out of here, and I'll start going this way. There's
Victor,
a pen
you're
and
calling
tap.
state legislators, right?
We are calling state legislators next week. This week, however, on the 14th, we're calling the Macomb County Commission. So if you're interested, pass that along. If you're not, keep it going. And then once you get over here, sir, just pass it forward, okay? But thank you very, very much for your time. We will be calling state legislators next week.
So thank you all so much for coming. Do we have any cookies? Eat some more cookies, and please again make sure to sign in if you didn't already, and we'll make sure to follow up with some more information. Have a good evening.